Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. Let us end the Blockchain Fest with a keynote presentation from Sandra Rowe, who is the CEO of Global Blockchain Business Council. She will reflect upon the impact of distributed technologies. Sandra, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sandra Rowe. I'm the CEO of the Global Blockchain Business Council, otherwise known as the GBBC. We are a Swiss-based nonprofit focusing on advocacy, education, and partnership. I'm delighted to be back for another year with Istanbul Fintech Week. I want to thank the entire IFW team for this opportunity. Without further ado, I'm going to share some slides with you so that we can talk through the global state of blockchain and digital assets, at least from a GBBC perspective. Hopefully you can all see the screen now. I will be covering a number of different topics. So we will go through this very quickly. These slides will be available to you, so please ask the IFW team if you are interested in a copy of this presentation. I'm going to cover a quick global overview of where we are, especially in the middle of a very unusual time in history. During the pandemic, there are a lot of different things that have shifted and frankly accelerated in the digital economy. I will also be talking about next generation payments and banking use cases, as well as insurance and global supply chain in the context of financial services. And further, I'm going to give you just a quick outlook to what we're seeing in 2020 and beyond. There are some very exciting things afoot. So many of you have journeyed through the last few years and have witnessed the rise of not only initial coin offerings, ICOs, and cryptocurrencies, but you've also seen a rise of lots of use cases around blockchain technology. And I think that has only accelerated and continued throughout all of 2020. And what we're seeing here is a real interesting shift to what can blockchain do in terms of solving for problems related to transparency, trust building, and mechanisms for verification. So if you are a multi-stakeholder network, or you have a use case that involves lots of different parties, how can you share information in a way that is secure, verified, and true? And then there are a number of use cases around, whether it's government or healthcare or financial services, where this applies. And I think there's some very exciting developments we'll quickly talk about. I've highlighted here some of the major sectors that I believe are truly things to watch out for. Education, we've seen a leapfrog in online learning, and that was already in the works for many, many institutions and many countries around the world. But I think what the pandemic has done is actually pushed and accelerated this forward. And the context of how blockchain plays in, a lot of people have talked about, blockchain certified credentials, identifying people using a blockchain. There's lots of different use cases, actually. So EdTech, if you are interested, I think is a very exciting field, as is energy. It's not just about renewables. Even oil and gas are looking at blockchain use cases with respect to what is relevant in their world. It spans the spectrum. Carbon credits is also another major topic now, and sustainability, going into a world where if we're going to build back better, how do we do that in a more efficient, energy efficient way? Financial services, obviously I'm going to expand on. Healthcare has also risen to the top as a major priority for how do we share information in a secure way. Our health records should be protected. It should be held by the owner or the actual person is affected, but yet our data sits in many different places in the world. How can that be mitigated using blockchain? And furthermore, how can doctors and hospitals and government agencies speak to each other in a more efficient way? These are conversations that we're hearing about, particularly in the US. We are seeing that there are more and more blockchain use cases around dealing with the pandemic. Time will tell whether these use cases will be readily adopted, but I do know there's a lot of experiments going on at the moment. And then furthermore, I'm going to end here and say that government and media are always big areas for looking at blockchain use cases. I think governments are now listening. Talk a little bit more about that. Media in particular, we see a lot of fake news, news misinformation, disinformation, as people call it. This is a real problem. I think is yet to be tackled satisfactorily. So in a world where we are constantly bombarded by digital information, how do we make sure that it's actually the sources where it says it's from and it's not just disinformation? So I think there are a number of different use cases around that. And then I am going to touch upon supply chains. I think we're going to see a major shift in the way global supply chains operate over time. It's going to take a long time for a lot of the wholesale move of different processes, but I think that's already started. So there's definitely interesting things to watch. And I want to switch a little bit to SDGs, or for those who are not familiar, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. I think what has been really interesting is a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago, we had the UN General Assembly, which didn't actually meet in New York. It was like the first time in its history that it did not have as a General Assembly in New York, where everyone descends upon New York City. Instead, what happened was they had a very small group. And what we do at the GBBC is typically have a blockchain event around the SDGs and who is doing cool things around solving for SDGs. And what was interesting to us, and the only reason why I'm showing this to you here, is the diversity of organizations, whether it's a UN organization, whether it is a large enterprise for profit, whether it's an NGO humanitarian group, or an entrepreneur, tech entrepreneurs, or a sports team like the LA Clippers. There are many different groups doing very interesting things around sustainability. So I think if that's of interest to anyone at all, I think you can absolutely marry fintech innovation of any kind, and sustainable systems. And I think that's a very key theme that will be coming through over the next number of years. And I think it will only get more prominent as something that the people want, younger generations want, and also as a general view that we have one Earth, and frankly, we need to take better care of it. Major topics and themes, I just want to highlight again, in a post-COVID world, I think in a current and a post-COVID world, we're going to see lots of opportunities. I had a very good conversation with the commissioner in India yesterday about this, and we are all going through hard times. But when you think about it from a entrepreneurship standpoint, adversity and difficult times always brings opportunity as well. Obviously, you've got to selectively choose which opportunities you will pursue, but we are seeing an absolute acceleration of the digital economy. And in a world where people cannot talk to each other, people cannot meet each other in person as much, different ways of operating, of interacting is absolutely key. And I've attached a lot of information here for those who are interested, whether it's a public-private sector relationship, governments are listening, there's a lot of different things going on now, whether it's carbon credits in the environment, or whether it's about recycling and how do we create circular economic models to help people actually participate in a network, but also get paid for that. Some very interesting experiments going on there. The concept of open finance versus decentralized finance versus democratized finance. We have a number of leaders in the fintech space who are speaking out against this concept that somehow decentralized finance is the same thing as democratized finance. Some people would argue that actually we should be spending more time speaking about how do we provide more access, more opportunities, which is really more akin to democratized finance. I think this debate will continue, whether the two concepts are actually the same or not. But I think it's well worth noting that thematic, which is people are looking for ways to not only bring more people to have access, but that access is not just about banking. It's very different. It's, what else can you do on your mobile phone that helps give people financial services access? It's not just about a bank account. And then further to that, as I mentioned, digital education again, and believe it or not, hunger. One of our use cases last month was with the World Food Program. We did a hackathon the year before, and they linked up with a UK NGO related to creating a digital cooperative for farmers in Peru. And you may have also recently heard the World Food Program won the Nobel Peace Prize. We're so proud of the World Food Program. And they're using blockchain technology. Please reach out to the innovation team in Munich if you are interested in this area of development, because there is a lot of innovative technology being used, not just blockchain, for helping end hunger. So again, I think the use cases are wide. They are many. I think it'll be time before we see the true scaling and production readiness of a lot of these initiatives, but we are seeing them. And we're very positive that there will be a rise of adoption. I think the measure of success will be when we don't hear about blockchain, but it just runs. And as a consumer, you have no idea that it's running on a blockchain solution, but you have a great user experience and or things are cheaper, faster, and more efficient. I think that is ultimately the goal we need to get to. So just touching upon payments and banking, I think there are kind of the usual use case that people talk about, which is, oh, it takes too long for a payment to go through, especially wire transfers cross-border, or it costs too much, or it's all of the above issues, right? And I do believe that there are some use cases on the payment side, particularly cross-border payments, where blockchain-based solutions, cryptocurrencies, and digital assets are putting pressure on the existing payments rails to improve, which is a very good thing for the consumer at the end of the day. But there's more than that. And I want to just highlight this, because what you're beginning to see, and the reason why is just a snapshot, of course, and you see some names that you will readily be familiar, and you will see some names that you're just like, who are these companies? And what I'm trying to just show you here through logos is that you've got both old institutions and you've got some new up-and-comers you may have never heard of yet, who are going to create the new financial services world, the next generation. And some of them are operating, focusing on cryptocurrencies trading. Some of them are focused on improving the way we issue bonds and equity. And some of them are just working on, their existing financial services offerings and trying to improve on that or build on that for the next generations. I think what we need to look at is a more holistic approach, that there will be many, many different approaches to next generation financial services, and that there's room for a lot of players and actors. And I think we're going to see the rise of many, many more. Let 1,000 flowers bloom, and let's see how many end up surviving. But I think we're going to see some really interesting consolidation plays, but also we're going to see some really interesting new names become those large entities that will provide a different way of accessing financial services. So this is just a very small snapshot. It's certainly not comprehensive. There are thousands and thousands of companies out there, blockchain, crypto or not, innovating in the space. I just want to actually say that I would be remiss not to talk about the rise of stablecoins and CBDC in conversation. CBDC, for those who may not be familiar, are central bank digital currency. The concept has been around for a very, very long time. It's digitized fiat currency. So it's when a central bank would offer a digital version of fiat currency and of their local currency of their country. Stable coins is different. It's usually privately issued by a group or a private entity. And it's meant to help facilitate on-ramp, off-ramp of crypto into fiat world, for example. There's been a proliferation. Probably the most famous would be akin to a Libra or a Tether or a USDC for those who are in the space. I think it's a space to watch because that interplay between central bank digital currency, stable coins, and cryptocurrencies and fiat currency is going to be an interesting one. It raises the question of what is money? What is money to you? What is money to me? What is money to society? And that can take different forms. And then layer on the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic and very few people want to use paper currency anymore. Paper currency was already being phased out over time in certain countries. You can barely find any, but it's now accelerating. I think people are using less cash for not only just decreased usage in general, but also because of the contact of potentially going from, one passing on one paper currency to another. In some countries, it's still readily used, but I think over time, we're seeing a decline. And so with that, you see the rise of digital versions of things. And I think the question around data as value that we now can move around as frictionlessly as email. Imagine you can move money around as quickly and cheaply as email. If that's a goal that we have, then I would say it's happening. The question is, which will they be? Will they be CBDCs? Will they be stable coins? Will they be cryptocurrencies? Will they be all of the above? I would say right now, judging by what we're seeing, we're probably going to see all of the above for quite a while. And then there will be some prevailing digital assets that will be used. But the nature of what is money is changing and it's becoming digitized further and further. So it is worth exploring if that is of interest to you. I'm going to talk about insurance very quickly because it tends to not get a lot of attention. And I know it's not particularly the most exciting topic for most people in fintech world, but it is important. And it is a multi-trillion-dollar industry. It protects businesses, governments, people, depending on what kind of insurance that you take out. But insurance, particularly on crypto, has been difficult and digital assets in general. I remember being at a very large corporate and we tried to actually get insurance. And this is a very long time ago. It's like 2015, 16, 17 era from a traditional insurance company on digital assets. And you wouldn't believe the amount of trouble and concern and issue this took because there was just no way to risk assess. How do you put a premium on insurance for crypto or digital assets back then? The world has evolved a lot. Now you have household names like Aon and Lloyd's and other insurance companies, but you have up and comers like Evertas who are looking at providing insurance on digital assets. The rise of digital assets and cryptocurrencies also requires infrastructure to be built around it. And that includes insurance, it's custody solutions, it's risk management, it's all the things that we already have in financial services world, but now we need that also for digital assets. And I'm also talking about, when I say digital assets, I'm not just talking about cryptocurrencies. I'm talking about physical things that are digitized. I'm talking about, digital versions of equity, of bonds, of any type, financial instruments that may come into play. All of these things are legal contracts effectively. And therefore they still need the infrastructure around them, whether it's regulation and insurance and risk mitigation factors, and then layer on top of that, the technology, cybersecurity related issues as well. And these are important. There's some research done giving industry insight on the insurance sector. In case any of you are interested, there's some statistics here for you to look at, but I just wanted to highlight that, insurance is a pretty important part of it. And one region that's doing a lot of work is sort of the risk capital of the world from a reinsurance standpoint, and now from a insurance on digital assets standpoint is Bermuda. We just had a conference last week related to this topic, and the spotlight is growing on it. Global supply chain. I'm going to go through this from a financial services perspective mainly. A lot of people talking about tracking and tracing, and absolutely, I think there's some really interesting work being done. And frankly, if we could all be satisfied and know that our goods that we are buying, our finished products that we are buying are coming from good sources, as a consumer, I think that's a great thing. From a enterprise standpoint, it's also a good thing if companies could verify that the commodities that they're buying are clean and green. And I think these are all things that are being worked on by many companies. But I also want to highlight another important thing, which is the financial services aspect of this. There's still payments in global supply chains. There's still trade finance issues in global supply chain. There are a lot of financial related problems and frictions in global supply chains that are incredibly interesting and frankly could be prime for solving using various fintech solutions. So I highlight that because I think global supply chain is one where there's a lot of rethink by countries on how they're going to be operating. And frankly, another one I want to highlight is really Belt and Road. You see that Istanbul, plays a prominent role in this new kind of world order. The goal is what, a 2049 build out. We've been working a lot with AIFC in Kazakhstan to understand what the implications of this are. If you obviously notice, the Americas, both North and South, are excluded from this global trade route. If it takes hold, they're also using the latest technologies. We're going to see a massive shift in the way that this particular region, including parts of Africa, all of Europe and China and Turkey and Middle East, also operate. It's in India, should not leave out India. It could shift a lot of very important trade routes and frankly, also partners in terms of emphasis. So I think one area that we spend a lot of time on is just trying to understand what the global implications of this build out of infrastructure will look like. And they are absolutely not only using physical build out, but also technology built into how they will operate this global trading route. Who knows, maybe they'll have their own stable coin as well. I don't know. Okay, 2020. Beyond, where are we? Well, I didn't talk about identity very much, but it's a very important topic. You've got countries like India, which has the largest digital identity system in the world, 1.6 billion people, let's say. They are thinking about merging and figuring out if they could use it on a blockchain-based solution. Right now, it's just on a digital identity database and seems to be working fine, but they want to add in layers of services on top of that. So there have been multiple discussions around whether it can move to a blockchain-based solution for certain additional services. That's pretty exciting. 1.6 billion people on a digital identity system on a blockchain. Wow, that would be eye-opening. There are lots of different groups right now working on use cases. Some of the flags you may not know, Estonia, you've got even obviously Switzerland, you've got different groups that are enterprise as well as NGO or associations who are trying to come up with standards. I still think there is a TBD on where we end up, but digital identity is an important one. And a lot of people would actually say we need digital identity standards because it's the gateway to everything else. If you have a sound digital identity solution, then you can then have your financial services persona or your financial persona, your digital healthcare persona, your digital academic credentials persona. And all of these things can be managed through a common digital identity understanding. The operators and applications may be all different, but the idea is if the underpinning is the same, it would certainly help with interoperability. So these are the kind of discussions that are happening. And I want to end on this note, and it's a positive one. So the Global Blockchain Business Council and the World Economic Forum and a bunch of industry leaders got together, and we've now mapped for the industry 185 jurisdictions, nearly 379, or nearly 400 industry groups, and 30 plus technical standard setting entities. There's 2 reports and an interactive world map. Why is this important? Well, here's the thing, and these are some of the partners that we just released this last week. It is important because in order for this industry to scale and for this industry to have mass adoption, we need standards. And even from taxonomy to legal, regulatory, and technical industry consortia, we are still in that furiously building, tons of initiatives going on, and frankly, a lot of people sitting in silos. And so what we're trying to do is step one, we've mapped it as best we can, and we will continue to expand the mapping and keep up to date because there's a lot of information that's flowing. We invite you to participate. It is a free, open access initiative. We have decided that it should be available to everyone. We're going to be translating it into as many languages as we can. The reports are currently being translated into several Asian languages because of requests that have been made. This is global. This is meant to be a global resource tool for anyone in the world doing research. And we hope that you find it useful. And there's a feedback page for anyone to participate. So I do welcome you to check out the map. It's actually pretty cool. If you hover over the country, you can actually find all of the work from different government agencies that have been actually published publicly related to blockchain and crypto and digital assets. And looking out, this is not meant to be my crystal ball, but I just do see a number of things going out to look out for. We are building digital infrastructure. There are key players that are doing this. I think we need to make sure that it does not become a US owned or a China only owned or a specific country only owned digital infrastructure. Because imagine if everyone builds on it and you basically own the highway, digital highway. Think of the control that you might have or an influence you might have over that. And these are concerns that we have from a GBBC perspective, that it is truly a global coalition that creates a very, as neutral as possible digital infrastructure so that everyone and anyone can build on it. And so I think these are conversations to be had for the next decade. And then going further out, we're already seeing government build infrastructure on different blockchain solutions. It will take time. But we're seeing that shift, and we do really believe that over the next decades, you're going to see more and more governments that are moving to solutions where they can share information more readily, provided legally that's possible. And there will be a shift towards how do we improve citizens' lives and deliver better services, whether that's payments or information, in a way that is still secure and safeguarding people's privacy. And on a final positive note, this is just one metric, but if any of you are feeling, disappointed by what's been going on, how difficult the times have been, and completely empathize, we live in a very different world as well. We've all had to adjust, but pre-pandemic, November 3rd, there were about 15,000 blockchain jobs in the world, and all I've done is search blockchain worldwide. Just yesterday I checked, October 20th, I checked, and it's up to 16,000. By the way, that's a 2,000 jump from when I checked just a month or two ago. So there are jobs being created. This is not the only metric, but to me, it's on an upswing, and we're only going to see this accelerate. So this is a good time. Find an area that you're passionate about and get stuck in. And it's a global community that collaborates. So reach out if you need help or have any specific things that you would need to highlight. We're here, we're together, and we need to keep growing. Thank you.
So this is it, a wrap for today. Let's meet tomorrow in the morning for Digital Banking Summit. That is starting at 9:20 Istanbul time. Enjoy the rest of the day. Look forward to seeing you back tomorrow.